It looks like the drugs have been either recalled or seized at this point. It's not entirely clear, but we don't think they're still in the supply chain. What we've discovered is that a number of companies, the FDA and European regulators, had told us last month when news that this fake Avastin, a cancer drug made by Roche, had made it into the country, were all actually, or many of them were linked to a single drug distributor, a Canadian man named Tom Houghton. He owned companies in Barbados, was affiliated with a Tennessee distributor, a Montana marketing company, and also a British supplier that shipped the drugs across the Atlantic in the first place. And it turns out that he and one of his key associates are also under investigation more broadly for the illegal importation of drugs. So the takeaway is that these drugs didn't slip in through what the FDA would consider a legitimate set of businesses. They came in through a series of companies that are explicitly in the business of selling non-FDA approved drugs in the U.S.
And these supply chains are really complicated, but who's buying them? Is this consumers going online and buying these drugs, you know, through something they know is that they're getting drugs from Canada or drugs from overseas?
Well, right. I mean, the doctors, it's not entirely clear whether the doctors who are buying drugs.
So it's doctors buying this, not
right.
consumers.
You know, I mean, the Canadian internet pharmacies that I think a lot of consumers may be familiar with at this point, you know, have for a long time sold drugs either from Canada or sourced from even further afield, perhaps Turkey, other parts of the Middle East or Europe, directly to consumers. That could be like Lipitor or most prominently Viagra. What these guys are doing is marketing directly to doctors. That's more expensive drugs, typically injectable or infusion drugs. They treat things like cancer in the case of Avastin. And these doctors are buying from distributors that are not sort of mainstream companies. And I don't think they always know that they're buying drugs that aren't FDA approved. Sometimes one would think that they'd see the price differential, 20% in the case of the Avastin that was being sold to these guys, and think something might be awry.
And that's a lot of money. I mean, we're talking about very expensive drugs here.
Yeah, Avastin, the vials of Avastin that were counterfeited cost $2,400 a piece, according to Roche. And this guy's company was selling them to the doctors for $1,995.
Chris, what kind, just so we have a sense of, what kind of quantities are we talking? Are we talking about thousands and thousands of doses of Avastin that made its way into the
No,
US?
we're not talking about quantities like that. We're talking about about 40 packages. Not entirely clear how many vials per package, but we're not talking about a huge quantity.
And Avastin is a very prevalent drug in the United States. So in the overall scheme of things, while this is a significant thing, it's not like most major hospitals in the United States are sitting on, you know, huge stores of counterfeit Avastin. The fact is, it was relatively small in the scheme of things, but you know, it's a big enough deal that it gets a lot of attention.
I know the FDA wants to make it real clear to consumers, in talking to us, that counterfeit drugs are not a giant problem in the U.S. This is a small portion of the market. But what this investigation into these importers shows is that this sort of secondary or gray market that sells either online or through a sort of anonymous fax blast to doctors, it creates this opportunity for fake drugs, usually a problem for the developing world, frankly, to piggyback into the States.
And not a huge problem yet, but I mean, is the FDA taking a new tack to make sure this doesn't become a bigger problem?
They don't say so. It seems that prosecutors are increasingly pursuing doctors who are buying these drugs. The FDA doesn't think that it's like an emerging trend at this point in general, but it's certainly clear that these types of networks are increasingly targeting doctors. I should add, these internet pharmacies that target consumers have been around for a long time, and one of the most prominent ones, CanadaDrugs.com, was also named in subpoenas that we obtained to these doctors that also targeted this network run by Tom Houghton. Those two men happen to be brother-in-laws. The guy that runs CanadaDrugs.com is a man named Chris Thorkelson.